Alex Jones makes his way back onto Twitter after a struggle for Elon Musk to even just take over the company. Now it's been over a year. Alex Jones and other voices have still been censored. Now, people like Andrew Tate, and Laura Loomer, and other political voices that were censored are now back on the platform since Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter and now what is now X.com. And so Alex Jones is kind of a linchpin. He was the beginning of censorship. So for those of you who don't know, Alex Jones, radio show host out of Austin, been on the radio since the early 1990s, and he has been speaking on behalf of conspiracy theories, but also not just conspiracy theories. Now, today, what people are realizing is just plain history, the history of how the world is being developed, the history of, where we are today and the forces of power that are in existence in our world today, but also in the world in the past. And so Alex has been exposing the self-proclaimed globalists, by the way. That's how they explain themselves. Now, of course, this is in the white papers in the 80s and 90s. They've since tweaked that name a little bit. That term has gotten a negative connotation, and so they sort of shifted into different things like internationalists and various other ways of claiming to be for all the people or instilling some kind of global world order. And when people hear, new world order or world order, they think of conspiracy or, oh, there's some people conspiring in control. What it basically means is power structures that are utilizing their power, their abilities, nation states, banks, oligarchs, various levels of power can come together and try to influence the world in their own way and order the world, have their world order, their vision of the world order to be implemented. Okay, so it doesn't mean that the plan is always the same plan and it's just now always incrementally happening. No, there's been competing factions and competing powers and competing entities that have looked to shape the world to where it is today. And of course, you have Agenda 2020, 2021, and Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050. I mean, you do have some global summits that create some level of a consensus on how they want to make the world order, but it's still a competition. And we are living in a world that is full of not certainties for our future, but possibilities. There are various different possibilities for Earth's future, humanity's future. And you have competing world powers and entities, I'll just say that, entities that are looking to pose their idea of the future onto everybody else. I mean, they use stimuli from various things, even boiling down to what Twitter once was, even down to the trending topics on Twitter. I mean, just getting the consciousness of humanity focused in on war or news or whatever it is that they want to curb everyone into. It is what I consider the Matrix, okay? The Matrix is the false reality of trending ideas and topics and things that people want to get into and realities that are being developed, false realities that people will live inside of and be trapped in. And this goes for all sides of humanity. Like, doesn't matter whether you're left or right, doesn't matter what religion you are. There are various different matrices that are developed for you to be trapped into. Okay, whether it's call it an ecosystem, call it a bubble of thought, whatever you want to name it, whatever makes you feel good, that kind of thing is what controls our actions, right? And so there have been competing world powers that have attempted to curb those actions on a collective mass consciousness level. And that we are witnessing now. I can go on and on about how we're witnessing it. War in Israel, Hamas, and Palestine. You've got war in Ukraine and Russia. You have various different things happening in the nation state that we live in the United States. There's things happening all over the world. There's news and topics that happen in entertainment that kind of go viral and get control of everybody. Look at the way the submarine went down in the Titanic. Remember that thing? Went underwater and then they lost it and blah, blah. It was just the whole thing. It's news like that is more about practicing narrative than it is actually covering something of value. They don't give a fuck about the people who died in that submarine going down to visit the Titanic. That doesn't matter to the media. What matters is running a false paradigm so that people can just jump on a bandwagon and get, eyeballs and influence on the mass community to focus on one thing. It's just a practice run. And so we see that with wars and various different things that there are other competing powers trying to push us into. So I say all that to begin because Alex Jones has been doing his due diligence, his research, using his connections to expose these various different power structures. And he's been relatively balanced on exactly who these people are. A lot of people say they. But there are specific people involved in various different groups. And I would even say, again, entities where they have a worldview and they are looking to use their power, their authority, their influence, the Bill Gateses of the world, people like that, to instill that vision of the future. So somebody like an Alex Jones is like somebody who's been exposing that it actually exists. See, because back in the 90s, people didn't really even know it existed. There was a certain level of media propaganda through news and television that it was very easily controlled. Media and TV and radio was even easier. They're like tools, okay? They can be used for a lot of different things. But one of the main components of media is to influence people. Okay, so influence people into warfare, influence people into doing things that they shouldn't be doing or eating foods they shouldn't be eating, all kinds of things. Okay, that's what media is, and that's what there was a monopoly of, which was very closely tied groups. I'm not going to say it's one group because it's not one group, but it's closely tied and knitted groups of people who owned all the largest networks. So it was easy to control the flow of information back in, even before the internet. Let's just say prior to the internet, it was a lot easier to control mass information, okay? This is why radio, just so y'all understand, radio back in the 1930s, when it first ever came out, the concept, the technology for radio waves, there was this competition in the courts. There were these lawsuits and things that happened that challenged free speech. And when that occurred, the radio and radio show hosts and people who, were joining on the radio, whether it's by phone call or they were also people who had their own show on the radio, were having complaints or issues with what they would actually talk about on the radio, realizing that radio was not as easily manipulated or controlled as TV and mass media production later down the road, decades later, right? So in the beginning, radio had their own issues running into First Amendment. What can you actually say on this broadcast technology? Can you say whatever you want? Can you talk about aliens and Bigfoot? Can you talk about what the government's doing? Can you talk about, all kinds of various different issues when it comes to military operations or whatever? There were so many things that were happening on the radio very early on that people didn't realize what should be said, what shouldn't be said. So there were all these lawsuits back then, even in the 30s, that actually solidified the First Amendment even more. So people realize that in lawfare, you have the Constitution, it's kind of the basis of our law in this country. And then what happens is you have new technologies and new concepts that kind of challenge those existing laws, right? Like it challenges it in a way that just makes questioning of how should we regulate such technology like space exploration and things like that. Like that, when those things occur, you have to go to court. Some people will sue, entities will sue a radio show host, let's say in this example. So what happens is when people sue each other, then you're going to build a legal system out of it. Because what happens is whoever wins or loses in these lawsuits is going to determine the law and regulation around this new up-and-coming technology. So when radio was first out, there were a lot of lawsuits, but all of these First Amendment lawyers and judges made rulings based on, you can kind of say whatever you want. And they kind of made so many rulings that there's actually a lot of law interwoven into the concept of the radio industry. So there's a lot of protection. Let me just say that. You have the First Amendment, but then you have layers of other regulations and laws that protect that First Amendment that were already won. These are legal battles that are already won that develop the law for radio, right? So with that being said, on radio, you can practically say whatever you want, except you can't curse. And there's certain things you have to, have. It's like a mature program. You have to have some level of like censorship to make sure that there's, kids not listening to various different stations that, could have vulgar language, things like that. There's very minor regulation when it comes to radio. So when you think of Alex Jones, think of radio. Okay. A lot of people think of other random things that he said, like the frogs are gay and God knows what. But when you think about it, he's been on the radio since the 90s, and he's been exposing the New World Order and all these conspiracies, and he's just entertained a lot of conspiracies, and he's done a lot of heavy research himself. And so now he's got Infowars.com. It's been around since 99, things like that. So he's been kind of evolving as the internet evolves, and to witness his growth and then what happened to him, which was a complete demonization of who he was through using a school shooting and the fact that he questioned the school shooting that didn't even happen or whatever. And he was entertaining other opinions on his radio show. Like, some people believe this never even happened and all those people are actors. And he's kind of just entertaining it. Like, well, maybe that's true. And then he'd have somebody else on. It's like, no, my son died and this is real and this is all whatever. So he would entertain. And just as a radio show host who's, using kind of as a middleman, he was entertaining all kinds of ideas because he even said that that's what the media came in. And what happened was, this was back in 2012, 13, whatever. When the election of 2016, Donald Trump was elected, Alex Jones was kind of a pivotal influencer who probably was responsible for getting him elected. That's fair to say that Trump kind of was helped by somebody like an Alex Jones. And so the media and literally Democrats in this particular case, because it's a political party, they saw Alex Jones as a threat, even though Alex Jones heavily criticized George W. Bush for going to war in Iraq. And he questioned the whole, weapons of mass destruction, which we now know is a lie. He questioned the, babies in incubators dying. That was the Gulf War. Interesting situations there. Maybe some of y'all don't even know what I'm talking about. But Alex was always questioning stuff. Republican, Democrat, didn't really matter to him. He was always skeptical of the government. He was really just very skeptical of who was in charge of the government, who was running the government, just had that natural suspicion around who was really running the show and what were they doing and why were they doing it. So with his suspicions, the Democrat Party, for some reason, just because of Trump, used this firm to go investigate Alex to try to find something they can dig up on him in order to destroy his reputation and destroy his media empire and destroy his life, right? So that's when they came upon the Sandy Hook thing. And when they went into that, they were able to really kind of pull out, there's like 23 minutes total of video. Think about it. Years and years and years. The guy does 6 shows a week. He's on the air for 4 hours a day, 6 times a week. So just think about how much airtime that is and then think about how many years, and then think about how all that calculated 23 minutes of him talking about Sandy Hook and talking about questioning one thing or another. I want you to imagine that right there is going to be able, like that. They use that as an excuse to destroy his entire life. Okay. That's the key that I wanted you guys to take away. And so that happened in 2018. And then in 2018, he was banned off of everything. He was banned off of Facebook, Apple, remember the App Store? His app was banned. Okay. And then he was, of course, taken off Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. He was eliminated off of all these social media platforms, all in one 24-hour period. So they were clearly collaborating to destroy him, right? So here's the thing about that. Alex was the canary in the coal mine. If anybody knows that firm? They have a bird that goes in the coal mine, and the canary will sound off if the coal mine's going to fall or like collapse or whatever, and that's how people get stuck down there. So Alex was essentially the canary in the coal mine for all social media influencers. Remember, everyone's been censored now. Now it's a regular topic of conversation. Here we are in 2023. But back in 2018, that was all brand new. And so when Alex Jones was taken off, they said, oh, he's questioned a mass shooting and this and that, all these various different things. And again, just skewing. And again, he's taking responsibility for some things he said. No one's making excuses for him. But the point is they use that as an excuse to eliminate him. But it wasn't about Alex. It was about the idea of censorship coming to fruition. That's what it was. It was the idea that these oligarchs, essentially social media, basically, can just eliminate someone from the social influence, from the community. Okay, you can ouster somebody like you would like a fucking witch on a witch trial. Okay, you take this person and eliminate them out of the equation of what is a future prediction. Okay, this is what it's all about. I'm just kind of getting in the quantum field here, but when you eliminate a voice, an influence inside the equation of what humanity is about to become, you can start to implement your own influence. So you take one out and you add your own little number of the equation in. And so mass media and these massive corporations want to eliminate as many voices as they possibly can so that they can limit their influence and then they can implement their influence, right? I want you to imagine being the type of person that would censor. Usually, if you're in an argument, I'm just very fundamental, basic level. If you're in an argument with let's say your brother or your sister, or you're in an argument with your parent or whatever, let's just say it's a parent and it's a child, just because there's a level of authority that the government has over us that they feel, and then there's a child. Like, let's just say we're the child in this situation. If the parent is kind of off their own rockers, I mean, parents are parents. I mean, they're all humans too, right? They make mistakes, okay? Some level of authority make mistakes. This is why it's important to question authority. Authority is not always supreme being, okay? That doesn't mean they're always right, okay? So when you think about it, it's like a parent says, when the child is saying, well, blah, 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 and the parent doesn't want to even listen. They just say, shut the fuck up, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah. There's some parents, obviously, extremely aggressive. But let's just say that's what the government wants in that term. And I would even say oligarchy of like social media influence. And they all have the similar agenda that they want to put in the stimuli to formulate the future. And some of the same CEOs and the founders of various social media companies are kind of intertwined in that idea of the future. Like they want to take our projection into their direction. Let's just say that they're collaborating. Okay. The collaborators want to just tell you, shut the fuck up. Here's the information that you're going to need. And if you're questioning too much and if you have too much influence, you see, they don't care about some guy in his truck talking about blah, blah, blah on the social media with 2 followers. They don't give a shit about that person. They only care if it's someone who has influence, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of followers, listeners like Alex had. He had over tens of millions probably, and the tens of millions each day listening to his radio show. I mean, imagine that kind of influence. They want to take that person out of the equation and eliminate them. And think about that person. Think about the person censoring. It's like the parent yelling at the child, hey, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. But really, maybe the child actually has some level of understanding that maybe the parent doesn't even get. Maybe the child is because it's from a different generation, so they get better. They get technology better. Certain things, to be all fair, you can learn from all people. I think that's a really key life lesson. And so the idea of censorship itself is just a weakness. Because if you're trying to censor somebody, you're trying to shut them out of the equation. If you're trying to shut them out of the conversation, it usually means you're trying to defend bad ideas. If you have a bad idea and you're in charge, which this happens, people know this. There's people that are out there like this who have, maybe you have a boss like this. They're wrong, but they don't care. They're just using their authority to shut you the fuck up. And then they're going to do it their way. And then you just shut up and listen, and that's gonna be it. Y'all know what I'm talking about. There's people out there in movies as well, depicted in movies as like the shut up, I'm not gonna listen to you, do it my way kind of person, and then what happens in the end. So I just want to say that that's kind of how I look. The people on the side of censorship are never historically right. Like they're always going to be in the wrong historically. And when I think of historically, I think of in history, and then I think of morally. So when you think of right and wrong, think of morals. So if you have somebody censoring, I just think of them as probably morally wrong. Like they're not going to be justified in their censorship. Because in the end, in hindsight, as we all like to say, you'll look back and say, actually, the censor was wrong to censor. That was the wrong thing to do. And they've turned out to hurt the trajectory of historical, the way history unfolded itself because of their ability to censor. And I tell you that I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but in Nazi Germany, that's what became in the 1930s, before World War II. It started with censorship, arresting political opponents, arresting various even newspaper journalists, people who were being rounded up because they were criticizing Hitler. They were questioning his motives. They were questioning his authority, and you can't have that. And so you look back and you think, well, the Nazis and what they did to Germany and their political party and the way they took over and then the way they took the country to war and then the devastation that happened after that, you would probably look back historically and say that was probably morally wrong. Some people can justify why Germany went to war after World War I. They got totally shafted, but I'm not trying to justify one way or another. Point is that when you censor, you're probably in the moral deficit, okay? So moving on to that, I kind of wanted to mention that that's kind of why Alex was censored. And so the most important thing is that someone like Alex was the first to go. So in 2018, he was the first one totally eliminated from social media. Who have we seen removed since then? Tons of different people, including the president of the United States. I really don't care what you think about the guy. Trump was censored off of all social media. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, deleted. A president of the United States was deleted from the conversation based on the January 6th and all that shit. Think about it, though. Why can't we hear what someone has to say? Why don't the censors allow bad ideas? If it's a bad idea, why don't they just allow it to suss itself out? Because eventually bad ideas will falter, okay? Bad ideas will eventually be exposed and people realize, okay, that's, probably not the best idea. Look back at the vaccine thing. 2020 brought about the censorship, the medical censorship. We have medical professionals, people who've been in the industry for 20, 30, 40, even 50 years in some cases, for Dr. Francis Boyle, the author of the Bioweapons Treaty. I mean, people like him and others were censored because what they had to say was against the narrative of what COVID was. Whole Foods took colloidal silver off of their shelves. Go try to buy colloidal silver right now at Whole Foods. I know a lot of y'all listening. Y'all go to Whole Foods a lot. Go in there and ask right now, hey, can I get some colloidal silver? Colloidal silver, one of the most incredible antiviral, antibacterial substances, silver, nanosilver. When you use it, it's what cleans hospitals. They don't use alcohol to clean hospitals. They use silver sprays, silver, all this nanosilver. Very, very, because when you spray, let's just say even on a surface, silver not only cleans and disinfects, it stays disinfected. That's why you have silverware. Silver, like you're eating silver, you're eating your spoon and your fork. Why do they call it silverware? Because silver, it was made of actual silver. And that's why those sets of silverware were like in the thousands of dollars back in the past before, they were able to make it out of aluminum and cheaper metals. But back in the day, silverware was silver because of its antibacterial properties. So I just want you to think, we're going to censor silver, like a generationally long-term solution to virus infections and things like that, but on a nano silver level. You can't even buy it at Whole Foods anymore because they censored products. They censored people and products that would help with the COVID thing. Just everyone remembers that shit. So when you look back, right, here we are in 2023, you might think to yourself, okay, wait, that was probably a bad idea. Right? That was probably stupid. Actually, various different treatments that were good for people that could have worked, that were cheap and easy to access. Maybe we shouldn't have deleted those because maybe, just possibly, people could have survived COVID, and especially the older folks. But somebody's mother, somebody's father could have been here today if it wasn't for censorship. So that's how powerful censorship is. Censorship can kill people because when you censor the good ideas, the natural treatments for COVID, the ivermectins of the world, are you kidding me? Because people censored that, other people died. That is the intensity of censorship. And so let's talk about the bright side here. With Alex being one of the first to go, and now with his return to at least Twitter, okay? Because now people realize the censorship has been dialed back, by the way. You can talk about election fraud now. You can kind of talk about stuff that you couldn't talk about 2-3 years ago. And so in vaccines and all that, like they've dialed back the censorship and the suspensions and the violations, YouTube. Okay. But watching Alex have a full circle, deleted 2018 and now back in 2023, there's something about a full, complete cycle that has occurred just based off of that alone. And as I mentioned, because he was the first made of as an example, it's like you're watching, you're in a row of people and there's, someone who's acting out of line, and then you're in a prisoner camp, whatever. And then in the movies, you know what I'm talking about. They grab that one person that's acting any level of resistance, like, oh, I'm not going to listen to authority. They grab that person out of the line and then just shoot him in the back of the head and throw his body on the ground. That's what they did to Alex, metaphorically speaking, when they took him off everything. So everyone watching the person get shot in the back of the head, you're going to straighten up and be like, fuck, I don't want to be killed. Do you see how that works? So people need to realize that that's what happened to Alex. So then what happened? The authorities, they got even worse. They started pulling everyone out of the line. You can't say this. Yeah, we can't say that. Well, now we're making up new rules. You can't say that. You watched a lot of people get executed, the Andrew Tates of the world and the Trumps of the world and various people just getting cut, right? From social media, getting deleted, getting censored, getting blacklisted, getting strikes, getting violations on their YouTube. I mean, all this sort of dancing around the censors has been occurring. And now to watch Alex make his return to Twitter because Elon Musk finally got a brain and figured it out. Maybe we should bring this guy back on. He didn't break the law or anything. So to bring someone like him on, it's a pivotal moment in history. I hate to say it that way because some people are like, who gives a shit about Alex fucking Jones? No. You have to realize having somebody like an Alex who covers news and information unlike anyone you've ever seen before. The guy is dialed in. Whether you love or hate him, he's dialed in. He knows exactly what's going on. I would even say he knows where the bodies are buried. He was the guy who exposed Jeffrey Epstein very early 2000s, guys. Like, this dude has been on top of the game for a long time, 20 plus years. So Alex's connections, his influence, his network is very critical. Where he gets information and how he's a center point of information. That's how I would explain Alex Jones. He's getting a lot of data from his own research because he's extremely dedicated to just sitting there reading papers and white papers and books and things that other people would never take the time to read. The only person I would say who takes the time to really read globalist writings, a huge shout out to this person, would be Jay Dyer. If you ever want to get into the scholarly part of the globalists and how to defeat the globalists and also like Orthodox Christianity and stuff like that, Jay Dyer is someone who you should check out. You should YouTube Jay Dyer. I think it's J like Jay and then Dyer is Dyer. Check him out on YouTube. You'd really like his shit. He's really epic on this stuff. He does book reviews of globalist writings. So the only person I would say is Jay. Jay is probably up there as a researcher. But Alex, obviously, you've never heard of Jay Dyer. Alex Jones has a wider reach, right? So he's the same mind, he reads a lot, he studies a lot. His studious nature inside of globalist writings and globalist understandings, and therefore also globalist actions, war in Ukraine. He was the first to call that out. He was kind of saying how it would unfold. He called out, what happened with Israel and Hamas. Like there's things that I think that he's a data center for because he's collecting all this information, not only in his own research, but he's also have friends and his connections and his networking, and he's connected to so many different places in the world, and he has access to get the most up-to-date information. So looking at him purely as an information data center, just him, InfoWars, the whole brand, his team of journalists and stuff, just look at Alex Jones and his InfoWars crew and his journalists as a center point of data. If you look at it like that, imagine you have this center point of very accurate information, okay, very accurate data, suspicious, skeptics on a lot of different things going on in the world, and then people who are able to predict things. I mean, his data center is pretty intense. So if you look at it this way, you're introducing a data set, okay? It's like an equation for the future of humanity here, okay? You took a data set out. Imagine that data set now being reintroduced into the equation for the future of where we're going. Okay. Now that that data set is reintroduced, we're able to see where we're going. We are now going to be able to pivot the trajectory of where we're going to go. So now, instead of going towards globalism and fucking tyranny and dystopia, we have a good data set. Alex isn't the only one, but we have a good data set that we've added into the equation. This is just my own example of it, that can possibly pivot us into that positive direction. And so if you haven't already, there's a Twitter Spaces, which is kind of like a podcast style discussion that goes on Twitter. For those of you who don't even know what Twitter, like y'all not on Twitter at all. And so they did Twitter X's, okay? And with this or Twitter Spaces, forgive me, X, it's called X now, but Twitter Spaces, they had Alex Jones, they had Elon Musk talking directly to Alex Jones, which was crazy. That no one would have ever thought that. So Alex basically like interviewed, Elon Musk. There was Patrick Bet-David, Congressman Matt Gaetz, journalist Laura Loomer, another journalist and Navy intelligence guy, Jack Posobiec. There was Vivek Ramaswamy, presidential candidate, General Michael Flynn, who was the guy in the national security advisor for Trump, who was cut off immediately once Trump was inaugurated in 2017. General Michael Flynn's a badass dude. He's a powerful voice going on with intelligence. He knows where the bodies are buried. That's eight big names. There was like 10, I think. Andrew Tate was on there. So many people were on this one discussion. If you want to YouTube it or go to Twitter and try to find it, just type in Alex Jones, Elon Musk on YouTube. You'll get, I think it's an hour and a half, it's really 2.5 hours, the full thing. But the part of where Elon Musk comes in, it was about an hour and a half. So I highly recommend everybody listen to that, because in that one little Spaces, they call it Spaces, but call it a podcast just for simplicity. So in that one podcast discussion, Elon, Alex, Vivek Ramaswamy, General Michael Flynn, I mean, so many different names and people were in there. And what was going on was they were talking about the future of humanity. They were talking about what we can do to correct this course that we're currently on. This what even Elon Musk talks about as a degradation of society, a collapse. You're either building towards something or you're collapsing. There is no neutral stability. There is no stability in growth, in civilization. You're either collapsing or you're growing. And so just really powerful conversation. And again, it goes to kind of reveal exactly why Alex Jones's his dialogue sometimes, the way he communicates, is necessary for this awakening that's happening in humanity. So we need his voice in order to ask the right questions, in order to provoke the right thoughts in others, so that we can move towards a more brighter future, a projected future that has humanity's best interest. And so that's kind of how I viewed it. And look, I mean, being that on Twitter, it kind of goes to show that Elon is for real about making it truly free speech. So now think about it like this. Look away from the fact that it is, Alex Jones. Think about free speech for a second. The example of free speech. I would say Alex is probably the most demonized, but the most demonized person is now back on X.com, right? That's Twitter. Okay, now what does that mean for the future? It literally means that if that's true, and what Elon says is we will not give out, suspensions and stuff. We won't do this unless you break the law. If you break the law and we are operating in your country, we have to suspend you or do something. But he said that in the United States, we will abide by the Constitution, freedom of speech, which is pretty much relatively everything you can talk about. If that's true and X.com becomes this forum for communication, we might just have witnessed the complete transformation of where humanity is going. Because the conversations that need to be had are going to happen now on Twitter. Because people like Alex are there, but also because of the collection of information that is going to come out of there. X.com is now the most powerful social platform in the world, because it has the ability alone, just by allowing people to express themselves. Just crazy how powerful humanity is. Just by having them express themselves is going to change the future of where we're headed. That's what I'm here to tell you. People like myself, I completely enjoy expressing myself. Of course, I've been, I want to get into various different things, business concepts, entrepreneurial stuff. I love that stuff. I want people to be better. I want people to perform at their best. I want people to grow and live in their purpose. Like, that's what I love to teach, and I love to communicate here on this podcast. And I love to cover these very cultural pivots that are happening in the world and news and information. So here to just implement that, I wanted to tell you guys that Twitter, if you're not already on it, I mean, this really could make it the most powerful app in the world. Everyone should be on it now, and tweeting, I probably should tweet more, or whatever you want to call it, post more on X. And, this just it changes the context of where we're at today. So, because with the dissemination of information being in the hands of the public, it takes away the main power that the Matrix had over the minds of man. Okay. And it's very, very true, because the Matrix, their gamble was that they could control information. If they can control information, if they can control how informed the public is, they're able to maintain control of virtually everything else. Now that X.com has pivoted that ability for the Matrix to control all of the information using censorship and promoting, people that are not even that influential, this gives us an opportunity in humanity to build our own bright future, to actually build the future we collectively want. And we don't have to collectively agree, but we can collectively build something and disagree or agree to disagree on the way there, so that we can all build something together. That's the key here. The Matrix has now lost its power. We're breaking that Matrix by allowing others to share their ideas. Let everyone share their ideas. It doesn't matter how negative they sound, doesn't matter how bad they sound. Let everybody share their ideas, and I'm telling you, the world is going to be better off, because bad ideas, truly bad ideas, are going to weed themselves out, okay? Eating a Tide Pod for the internet is going to eventually weed itself out, okay? Like, dumb stuff is going to make its way in and out. Everyone just needs to realize that is a part of the way the world works. Your sons and daughters are going to hear stupid shit at school, and they're going to come home and say dumb shit, and they might even do dumb shit like drugs or whatever. But realize that it's better for people to be exposed to everything that's bad and good, so that they can discern over what is truly good and live a more devoted life. I trust the person who's been a drug addict and been homeless and had a horrible life, who then became a fucking success like a Grant Cardone or something, rather than I would trust someone who's had it all good for them the whole life. They're goody two-shoe and they've never done anything bad. And, they have a moral authority because they are able to just, they had great discernment. I mean, I don't trust that person in terms of how influential they can be, or have they really been through life. And so that's what's important about being on these platforms. Don't shy away from platforms that have freedom of information, freedom of speech, like Twitter, like X. Go towards those platforms. Go towards that information, so that way you can challenge your ideas, whether you're emotionally connected to the outcome of something that's going on around the world, like everything. There's so much news and information. Whether you're attached to that outcome, I mean, realize that you shouldn't be attached to any outcome at all, because that's just personally, you don't want to be there, because it just, you're going to end up suckered into a reality that you don't want to be in. You're going to be unhappy, always unhappy, because you always have expectations for the world and how it should turn out. Okay. But if you put that aside, allow yourself to be challenged intellectually, allow yourself to be challenged emotionally by other people's communication. That is the key to the future, because if we do that enough times, you realize you become, let's say, dull or numb to this bad information. You want to call it bad information. Let's just call it bad information. You become numb to it. It doesn't affect you. If someone talks shit to you, oh, blah, 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 you'll never be successful, because you realize that you're going to have people, I think it's an 80-20 rule. You're going to have about 20% of the population is going to hate you. They're going to think you're awful. They're going to think you're stupid. They're going to think you're this or that, blah, blah, blah. If you gave a fuck about what they thought, you wouldn't be able to serve the 80% that believe in you, that trust in you, that are influenced by you, that want to follow your lead, that want to see you as a superstar in their eyes. Take them and realize that's the focus. That's the focus. Focus on the positive. But in order to get the positive, you're going to have to experience the negative, and that is very true even for speech. So I appreciate you guys all tuning in. Just wanted to chime in on that. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Leave a rating, review. Please leave a rating, man. That really helps me out. Also, really quickly, I want to announce, look, I've got a strategy coaching program. I'm doing a monthly program, and I'm also doing just 2-hour sessions. If people just want to do a session where, like, listen, man, I need your advice on a lot of different things. I got a lot of moving parts, whether it's a business, whether it's a career change, whether it's a move, a city change, life change, whatever you've got going on in your life. A strategist like myself can be right in your corner, helping you, guiding you, and giving you those strategies to help you succeed in that endeavor. So with that, go to the website on the description and the podcast. I'll put it on my Facebook as well. But go in there and schedule something with me. Let's talk. Let's chat it up. Let me see if I can help you out, because it is a passion of mine to be able to strategize for people to reach their goals and to reach their level of success. So check out the website there in the link in the description. And also, if you want to just book one, you can. I'll have the link to that as well. You can just go to the store, buy it, hit me up. If you bought the 2-hour session, it's $150 right now. I'm doing a discount for my monthly, which is going to be $500 for a month. It's a great price. I will increase the price. I'm only looking for a handful of people to work with monthly. So that will change over time. I'm just doing a lot of different things. So I would love for you guys to reach out to me on that. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.